Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and this 15-year-old takes on and enrages the entire Chippewa Valley School Board. What she says is absolutely amazing. You've got to watch every second of this. Let's go.
How many people ever noticed the picture that used to hang on the back wall? The board removed it now, but I took a photo of it. The first part states, quote, "Religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged," unquote. I'd like this board's lawyer to tell everyone here where that quote is from.
Well, we're all waiting to hear from you, Mr. Cava. What kind of lawyer doesn't know this? The quote is from the Michigan Constitution, Article 8, Section 1, where it lays out education in our state. Despite this constitutional provision, religion, morality, and knowledge were all removed from public schools. Religion isn't taught, and the Bible was excluded years ago. Morality is completely ignored, especially when elected officials, school staff, and you board members support gender confusion taught to young kids. Sexually graphic books in your school libraries, and display of pride flags that solely represent sexual orientations. Regarding the knowledge portion of the quote, standards were lowered and destructive ideologies pushed. And this board has ignored the abysmal proficiency scores, which continue to drop. This signifies knowledge is not a priority in this district. The second part in this picture states, quote, "It is the natural fundamental right of parents and legal guardians to determine and direct the care, teaching, and education of their children," unquote. Lawyer Cava, I don't expect you'll know where that quote is from either. It's MCL 380.10. Democrat politicians, the Michigan School Board, and this school board all want to deprive parents from involvement in their kids' education. They've even labeled parents as domestic terrorists for asking questions or expressing concerns. I have one final question. Can anyone on this board explain why you're ignoring the education parts of the Michigan Constitution and state laws?
You can stop that now. Thank you. We're all set. Please sit down. That's your first warning.
I'm not surprised you couldn't answer, considering knowledge was removed from this district. A quote by Maximilien Robespierre states, "The secret of freedom lies in educating people, whereas the secret of tyranny is in keeping them ignorant," unquote. Time for this board to focus on fundamental education rather than destructive ideologies. Thank you.
There's a ton to unpack in this, but man, this 15-year-old in one speech basically shows that she knows more and understands more about their systems than the entire school board. You know what? Let's start off with them for a moment. It seemed to be about 8-9 members on the panel. Of that 8 or 9, 4 of them were actually considering her words. And they were all on the left-hand side, or at least stage left. And all the annoyed members, 4 of the 5, were all on the other side. And you can, if you look closely, you can see 2 of them just had smug looks on their face, and the other 2, raw, unbridled anger. They despise this girl because she's doing something very simple. She is using basic rhetoric. She is using words from Robespierre, all right? Exposing the terrifying truths of just how ridiculous the left, which, by the way, that's where the right and the left come from. The left-leaning groups were ultimately captured by Robespierre. What did you get after that? You got the Reign of Terror, which ultimately ended with himself being the last victim of the guillotine. And he wanted to create a utopia by basically using fear and intimidation in order to usher in truth. That is a completely backwards way of thinking, and I can guarantee you about half that school board believes in what Robespierre have to say. Hey y'all, This is a shout out to my friends over at Colonial Metals Group, where CEO Paul Stone and his expert associates fully understand the gravity of our current situation and want to protect your wealth backed by gold, silver, and other precious metals. Folks, we are in an era of record inflation. We have a Congress that won't stop spending and a president who doesn't even know what planet he's on. That's how bad the situation is, and that's why I'm partnering with Colonial Metals Group. And if you have a first-time account with these fine upstanding people, you will receive up to $7,500 worth of silver, a nice old safe to keep all the good stuff in. You will get Roth IRA accounts for free backed by gold and silver, and insurance and warranty on these items for 5 years, all for free. So call the number below or check out the link in the description and let CEO Paul Stone and his expert team help you now, because your wealth might evaporate before your very eyes. Protect your wealth, protect your family, protect your future with Colonial Metals Group today. Now, back to regularly scheduled programming. I have heard communists in my own young life defend him and his actions. It is absolutely insane. But back to Amelia, I believe that's her first name. Back to her. So she quotes Robespierre to call out the insipidness of left-leaning policies. She then brings up a Democrat memo and a Democrat attempt to call out parents who basically say that, hey, our school boards are a little bit crazy, we should do something about them, and then have them picked out as domestic terrorists. This has happened across the country. After the lockdowns, parents started looking at their children's curriculum because they had a little extra time on their hands. They took one look at it and were terrified and horrified. And they took to the school systems and said, y'all, what you are teaching our kids is insane. Stop this immediately. And instead of listening to these parents, these school boards doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down, even getting the FBI to create a watch list for these parents. So she brings that up as well. Then she calls out the basic inability to teach these kids as testing scores have continued to drop ever since the lockdown era. This is a terrifying notion. We built our entire education system on these tests. Why? Well, that way you can determine who gets money for road construction. No Child Left Behind was one of the dumbest pieces of legislation in American history, and we were supposed to praise it because a Republican signed it into office. No, it was a terrible bill then, and it's making everything worse now. We have got to end any notion of tying these kinds of resources from a federal level to what a county is able to teach its kids. It is asinine. And finally, she calls out the school board themselves for not only not knowing the Constitution, but refusing to scrub the toxic parts of their curriculum, mainly showing a bunch of pride stuff to kids. Now, is pride bad? No, it can be. It can be used for ill purposes, but there are spaces where people need to be protected. There are certain people who have been ostracized by their family and they need a new one. It is okay to celebrate pride. What is not okay is to overly sexualize our children. That is where the line should be drawn. That's why conservatives aren't mad at log cabin Republicans. They're not mad at the average person in the office who might be gay. No, they're mad when they see kink show up to pride. And I'm not going to go into detail about that gross, ridiculous stuff. Just like sexuality, kink belongs in the home, behind closed doors. It's a private matter. Do not bring that into the public sphere. And that's exactly what these school board leaders are doing. They are teaching our kids ridiculous values and trying to tell them it's okay to be gay. Now, here's the theory behind it. I'll briefly explain that. If a kid might actually think that he or she is gay, they're probably going to need some help guiding along. The problem is that help needs to come from the family. It does not need to come from our tax dollars. It does not need to come from our schools. It must come from family. It must come from friends. It must come from people in our lives whom we trust. And the school districts across the country have all been captured by these ridiculous leftists and have therefore lost our trust. And she's proving time and time again they don't know what they're doing. They are going outside of their purview, and they're bad at their jobs. Or at least they're bad at teaching our kids. They're very good, however, at exposing our children to things that might not be suitable for them. We have to reform education in this country. And Amelia, I think, is spearheading at least the voice of the movement. And I hope she continues to do what she's doing. This girl is already a genius, and guess what? She is self-taught. She was not taught to think this way by her schools or even by her parents. That's her story. She looked up these things herself and came to the conclusion herself because she's a deeply skeptical and curious person. And that is exactly what a school district is supposed to cultivate. And this one definitely does not. And it's a crying shame. Our children deserve a better education than the slop that they are currently giving. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed the segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And hey, let me know how you would fix education down in the comments below. And until then, y'all have a good one.